With a word of prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for this day you will bless us with to be here tonight to learn more about you, Lord. I pray that we stay attentive as Grant gives us a lesson tonight and help him to have a ready recollection and a smooth tongue and for the words he has prepared for us, Lord. And thank you for sending your Son to die on the cross for our sins. In Jesus' name, amen.
And Daniel for letting me use his awesome podium here. My goal for tonight is, as I was preparing for this, I was really struck by how little wisdom, because we're talking a lot about wisdom tonight, I have. And so my goal is to get a little bit of wisdom from every single person in here tonight, especially Mr. Eric up there in the top. I'm just kidding. Okay, but anyway, I do appreciate y'all being here. So before we start, we're just going to read through chapter 8 of Proverbs. It's kind of long, so a good way to start off is just going to be with reading it. Do we have readers? Dad wants to read. There's a lot of verses, so we're going to split it up here. Let me flip there real quick. So, Proverbs, there we go. Okay. Proverbs. All right, Dad's 1. Anybody else? Bowden's got 1. Cody got, okay, so Dad, you do 1 to 11. Cody, you do 12 to 18. Bowden, you do 19 to 27. And Sienna, you got 28 to 36. Yeah, go ahead.
Does not wisdom call? Does not understanding raise her voice? On the heights beside the way and the crossroads she takes her stand. Beside the gates in front of the town, at the entrance of the portal she cries aloud. To you, O men, I call, and my cry is to the children of men. O simple ones, learn prudence. O fools, learn sense. Hear, for I will speak noble things, and from my lips will come what is right. For my mouth will utter truth. Wickedness is an abomination to my lips. All the words of my mouth are righteous. There is nothing twisted or crooked in them. They are all straight to him who understands, and right to those who find knowledge. Take my instructions instead of silver, and knowledge rather than the choice gold. For wisdom is better than jewels, and all you may desire cannot compare with her.
Cody, you got 12 through 21.
I, wisdom, dwell with prudence. I find knowledge and discretion. The fear of the Lord is hatred of evil. Pride and the way of evil and prevailed speech I hate. I have counsel and sound wisdom. I have insight. I have strength. By me kings reign, and rulers decree what is just. By my princes rule and nobles, all who govern justly. I love those who love me, and those who seek me diligently find me. Riches and honor are with me, enduring wealth and righteousness. My fruit is better than gold, even fine gold, and my yield is choice silver. I walk in the way of righteousness, in the path of justice, granting an inheritance to those who love me and fulfilling their treasures.
You got 22 through, just read to the end.
The Lord possessed me at the beginning of his work, the first of his acts of old. Ages ago I was set up at the first before the beginning of the earth. When there was no depths, I was brought forth. When there was no springs abounding with water. Before the mountains had been shaped, before the hills I was brought forth. Before he had made the earth with its fields, or the first of the dust of the world. When he established the heavens, I was there. When he drew a circle on the face of the deep,
Thanks, Bowden. That was long, so I appreciate you for reading that. So to start off with tonight, I want to take a little bit of a step back and look at a little bit of the macro design of Proverbs. So I know you guys have been reading. I've been in the other discussion class, but also, sorry, the slides are kind of bare bones, so you're just going to have to listen to me talk for a minute. But I know you guys have been studying the first chapters of Proverbs. So when we look at Proverbs, I think a lot of times, especially me, I think about like the little kind of like pithy sayings that we all know, like anger, like don't let the sun anger down the sun of your wrath or whatever. But that is not all the book of Proverbs is, as you all know. This is a speech, and the first 9 chapters of Proverbs are long speeches from 4 major players. We have the royal father, Lady Wisdom, the wicked man, and Lady Folly, right? So when I was preparing for this, I listened to this podcast on the Bible Project. They have a couple of podcasts, and it was really good. I would encourage you guys to listen to it. We don't have time to go through all that stuff today, but it is really good. But one thing that they brought out was the design of chapter 8 is when you get into it, especially in the latter half of it, it talks a lot about wisdom and wisdom being begotten, and it likens it to John chapter 1 and also to the beginning of Genesis and in Jesus. So one thing that the Lady Folly and all these people portray is you have the man and the woman, right? You have Lady Folly, you have the wicked man, you have the royal father, and you have Lady Wisdom. And these are kind of a parallel of Adam and Eve from the garden. You have the man and the woman, and one thing that it kind of talks about is later in the passage that both of them are called shrewd throughout this. Lady Wisdom and Lady Folly are both called shrewd. So one takeaway that I had when I was reading through this is that shrewdness it's amoral, right? There's no like being intelligent, being shrewd doesn't have like, it's not necessarily bad. It calls the serpent shrewd as well. That doesn't necessarily mean he's bad. It's just the end to which you go with said shrewdness is what is a measure of your morality. So to start off with, we're going to go through verses 1 through 11. We already read them, so we're probably not going to read them again. But one thing I'd like to point out to start off with is notice where Lady Wisdom is standing, right? She's standing at the gates, at the crossroads, at the highest places of the city, and you say we're not going to read the full passage, but she's crying out. She's crying aloud. And the writer set up wisdom and folly as mirror images of each other. Last week, I believe, my dad talked about Lady Folly and the speech that she had in chapter 8. The first 3 chapters, what? 7. Yeah, my bad. Chapter 8 today. But the first 3 chapters of Proverbs and also the first 9 chapters are all three like little lecture parts of each one. So chapter 7 is Lady Folly's like final speech. Chapter 8 is Lady Wisdom's refute, and then chapter 9 they sit down together and it's kind of their last call before you go into the actual like conventional Proverbs in chapter 10 and onward from Solomon. So yes, okay, so we're gonna go. Okay, one thing to notice here in the first 11 verses is that wisdom is not delineating between those it deems as worthy of wisdom, right? It's calling out to everyone. And so I would ask you guys, what wisdom calls out to everyone, including the simple and the foolish. What does that say about the nature of wisdom and her invitation? Mr. Chad.
It's open to everyone, so I like the imagery here that in chapter 1 it was the same way. The wisdom stands on the street corner and calls out. If you want to find wisdom, you can find it. It's not elusive. It's not exclusive. It doesn't differentiate. Doesn't choose who it wants and who it doesn't want. We choose whether we want to find it or not.
Yeah.
And so it's all on us individually. If we are foolish, it's a result of our lack of desire to find wisdom.
Yeah, our own choices. In this, I'm forgetting the verses, but in here it talks about, oh, simple ones. It talks about that. What? Verse 5. Yeah, oh, simple ones learn prudence, oh, fools learn sense, right? In the studying that I did, it compared a lot of times, oh, simple ones to Adam and Eve in the garden when they didn't know right or wrong. They were just kind of there, and they had actively really chosen God and haven't actively chosen to go away from him, right? So it's kind of pointing out there that it's really our choice. Like we all start off dumb. We all start off not knowing anything. And it's our choice as we go on to choose wisdom or folly. Anyone else?
James chapter 1, verse 5. Had that in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives to all generously and without reproach, and it will be given to him.
Yeah. Another interesting thing as well is if you think of whoever I am the way, people seeking God, people seeking truth. It talks about whoever seeks it will find it, right? It's kind of an inverse parallel of the garden when God sought Adam and Eve when they were hiding from him. And God, like inevitably God will find it. And it's kind of inversely with us. If we seek God, we'll find wisdom. It's all about just trying to look.
It's interesting to think too about what it means to seek wisdom. We can ask God for it. That's one way to seek it. We can also proclaim, like on the street corner, say, "I want to gain wisdom." But I do think that it takes that seeking wisdom is an active. It's an active. I don't know English.
Yeah.
It's a verb. It's an
Yeah.
action. You got to do something. You have to, and it's not just a one-time approach. It's not just I'm going to grab for wisdom and get what I can get, and then I'm done, and I have all the wisdom that I need. It's a constant chasing
It's a trajectory.
seeking after it.
Yeah. Not to take my own point from later, but I think that's one of the larger points too, because if you look at the very end of the chapter, it's kind of like it's very absolute. If you like Star Wars, absolutes. For me, I'm kind of a nerd. Like Danny talked to on Sunday, he kind of outed me there. But anyway, it kind of like to what you're saying though is it can be kind of hard when you're going through life. Like life is very like gray in a lot of ways. Like everything you do is not really like taken in context isn't necessarily good or bad. It just kind of is. But if you take a step back and look at the trajectory of your life, it's a lot easier to give it like a hard and fast good or bad. Kind of like you're saying, it's not really like the one like in the moment. Like a lot of small choices can lead up to a moral life.
Also, talking about you mentioned shrewdness. Sorry, I won't.
Oh, you're good.
But in verse 7, it's interesting to look at, and as we think about it, if there's a wise people, who would you call wise? We can go back to chapter 1 and look at where wisdom starts. That's not what the world would say, right? The world would say that the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. They're going to say the gaining of knowledge is the beginning of wisdom, or something like that. If you ask people who the wisest man that ever lived was, those that are not religious would say Albert Einstein, or some scientist or something like that. But when you look at wisdom, wisdom and wickedness are exclusive. They don't mix.
Yeah.
They're oil and water.
Yeah.
So you don't have wicked wise people.
Mm-hmm.
You might have, like going back to shrewdness, you might have they might have some shrewdness, but it's not wisdom, because wisdom is founded on God, and those that don't believe in God can never truly gain it.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, you could almost define wisdom as the absence of foolishness, right? And I think if you look through this passage, it's very supporting of that. Because if you look at even wickedness is an abomination to my lips. If you go down more, it's I hate pride and perverse speech. Like it's all over. I hate wickedness is what wisdom says. And so I think this passage lends itself to even defining wisdom as the absence of foolishness. Anyone else have any comments? I appreciate you monopolizing the class. Continuing on. Nothing you desire compares with wisdom, but folly also appeals to desire. How do you tell which voice is which when both are appealing to what you want? I think one thing too is reading that question is, I think a lot of times we give our desire, think our desire, or wickedness has a monopoly on our desires. I don't think that that's always true. Just to preface, obviously not giving you guys time to answer the question, but one thing I was thinking about when I was reading the questions is, I feel like, especially like, I talk to my Uncle Kyle a lot, and I feel like a lot of times we talk about wisdom, or foolishness, or evil as having, like, always being on our desires, and I don't think that's always necessarily the case. I think all of us have an innate desire to be righteous and be considered wise and to do wise things with our life. In practicality, like our urges, like our short-term urges might be for bad things, like our instant self-gratification, but I think that we all have the aspiration at wisdom, or most of us do at least. I do, I would think. I like to think. Anyway.
Give the textbook answer to how do you tell which
Mr. Rick?
No, I think we find this by looking through God's word.
Yeah,
You know,
for sure.
not question, be wiser, just study harder.
Yeah, I think that's the value of having good friends as well. It's easier to, if you have someone who emulates the Bible in their own life, then they can, if it's on their heart, then they can tell you, they can help you delineate from right and wrong as well. Anyway, okay, we gotta keep going. All right, going on. Proverbs chapter 12, 11, or 8, 12 through 21. Okay. All right. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about the character of wisdom. I'm going to go back and read verses 12 through 21 again. I, wisdom, dwell with prudence, and I find knowledge and discretion. The fear of the Lord is hatred of evil, pride and arrogance, and the way of evil, and perverted speech I hate. I have counsel and sound wisdom. I have insight, I have strength. By me kings reign, and rulers decree what is just. By me princes rule, and nobles all who govern justly. I love those who love me, and those who seek me diligently find me. Riches and honor are with me, enduring wealth and righteousness. My fruit is better than gold, even fine gold, and my yield than choice silver. I walk in the way of righteousness, in the paths of justice, granting an inheritance to those who love me, and filling their treasuries. Okay. So I feel like most of us in here have been Christians for a long time, and I think we get good at avoiding evil. We know what not to do. We stay out of certain situations, but I feel hatred is a different category than avoidance. You can avoid something you're completely indifferent to. You only hate something you're generally opposed to. This text seems to suggest that mature wisdom looks less like avoidance and more like opposition. Verse 13 connects the fear of the Lord to the hatred of evil. What is the practical difference between avoiding evil and hating it? Courage. Okay. Mr. Chad?
Avoiding evil, I think it's of the choices we make, it's the easy way compared to standing against or exposing it, which is the natural way that if we were to be in the light exposes darkness. And so we, by word, by deed, point out that sinful behavior is sinful behavior. We don't call it anything else. We call it, a spade a spade.
Yeah.
And it's certainly not popular. We all know the repercussions of that. I mean, if you don't, you've seen it at least, if not felt it in your own life. And it's hard, right? It's the narrow path. That's the whole, one of the analogy of the wide path and the narrow path. It's the hard life, the hard way to live.
Yeah. I don't know, I think it's kind of interesting because a lot of times I think that, especially as people who attend Church of Christ, we can be very intellectual in our faith. And to me, that seems a little bit like the difference between hate and avoid. Is like, if I avoid something, like I intellectually think that it's wrong, and so I just stay away from it, like, okay, like I'll just distance myself and then I won't have to ever come in contact. If I hate something, that's like, it's a very like strong word. Like I emotionally, like I feel something towards it. With avoidance, you can just kind of be like apathetic towards it and just like, it's kind of like whatever. Other people partake, like, but I'll just like be over here and then I'm okay. Like if I hate it though, I'm going to go up to it and I'm going to confront it. And the hard thing is finding the balance of hate and love at the same time. So obviously we know God and Jesus have that because they love us and hate sin, right? But I don't know. It's a hard balance, I think.
At the same time, you can't mistake the two. Like you said, like with hating, you're literally taking that stance, and people are gonna know that.
Yeah.
Instead of it just being, I'm just gonna avoid it. Like, no, that guy, he hates this or he hates that. They know it, and you really can't.
Yeah.
Like hate is pretty clear. It's
Yeah.
shown, especially through the action of something. And with
this reading is kind of an interesting split because we're going to go into the flip side of it. Verse 15 through 16 says, kings and rulers govern justly through wisdom. What does this mean? All right, what does it mean that someone can live by divine wisdom without acknowledging God?
Their biblical principles are also good principles. Mm-hmm. Why? I mean, there are things that are a good way to live. You bear fruit by living that way. Now, whether you acknowledge the source of that or not, I think it's still the fruits that are results of that behavior or that lifestyle are good fruits. And they're part of, I mean, we attribute them to God, but those don't recognize God will also see that it leads to peace, it leads to harmony, it leads to good results.
Yeah.
And so it's what you want.
Yeah.
That's what all good rulers and governors, that's what they want. They want peace, they want, equity, they want or equality, whatever, however you want to look at it. They want a society that works well together.
Yeah.
And that's a result of what God wants for his people.
Mm-hmm. I think as well, if you go down to the next verse that we haven't read yet, or haven't gotten to yet, the Lord possessed me at the beginning of his work, the first of his acts of old. Ages ago I was set up, and before the beginning of the earth, when there was no depths I was brought forth, when there was no springs abounding in the water, before the mountains had been shaped, before the hills I was brought forth. So really here, the writer is, or Lady Wisdom is claiming that she was of the first fruits, right? She was there at the beginning. She created everything. And so getting away from the theological implications of that, if we look at that claim that wisdom is the underlying theme, the creative tool that God used to make the world is wisdom, is what this is claiming. And so if we think about it in that context, in this question in that context, of course an unjust person can show divine wisdom in their rule, because wisdom is the underlying theme of creation. So of course every created being would show aspects of it, even if they don't actively choose that in their life. I'm not to get political, but I'm sure not everyone agrees with what Donald Trump does. There's a lot of things he does. He puts Jesus on himself with his face photoshopped on Jesus on his Twitter. It's probably not a good thing to be doing. But also, I think there's things that he does that show wisdom and show godly wisdom in the things that he does. So, not to say that he is, I guess he is sent by God because he was elected. God put him in his position. But any person can show wisdom, divine wisdom.
Well, governments are God's tool.
Sure.
And he uses them for his purposes. And how does he do that? Well, he leads them through divine thinking.
Yeah.
Wisdom origin is divine.
Mm-hmm.
So they won't recognize that, like any of the governments that God used to punish the Israelites or punish other nations didn't see themselves as God's, instrument of destruction. But God did. It's because God, the wisdom origin is God's.
Yeah. Does have any thought?
Would you say also with simply observing creation?
Yeah.
That would be something that people could do in a way without acknowledging God, but living by divine wisdom. I think it was good to it talks about look at the ant and observe her ways.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, and kings do that and act in that way where everyone's working together and all of that. And that could be that same concept.
Yeah. Live.
But Romans 1 will say that eventually should lead you to the Creator.
Yeah, for sure. I think we all emulate him, even if we don't try to. So we're made in his image. So, okay, going on. Oh, I forgot to put that. Okay. Hope everybody has a pen or a phone to write down because you get 2 minutes. Honestly, we're just going to write this down and no one has to share, so I want to see pens. I'm just kidding. You don't have to if you don't want. But honestly, describe your own pursuit of wisdom right now compared to earlier in your Christian life. What has changed and what has crowded it out? If you're young, you don't have to, it can be earlier in your life, period. Get 2 minutes. You can if you want, but I'm giving people time to answer the question.
I just off the top of my head, I think it's pretty easy just for me individually, but I think anybody that has reached the age that I'm around, is that you see less of like what you want to gain and more about how you can help others. Like how do I wisely live my life into the benefit of others? Like the focus becomes more and more and more about less about what I need and more about how do I serve others. I think that's just a natural as you get older. I'm certainly not tooting my own horn today.
No. Man, I can see the thinking going on over there. Yes, Mr. Randy.
I think for me, when I was younger, I knew things that were right and wrong, but I just didn't. In your mind, you think I got decades still, all
Yeah.
work on it. I wasn't as serious as I should
Yeah.
from a young age.
Yeah.
And now, as I'm in my approaching my mid-70s, you
Mhm.
realize the end of it is getting closer, and I've become more and more serious about
Yeah.
live right and do what I can, like Chad was saying, to think about others and help others more
Yeah.
rather than being so focused on what I want.
Yeah. Huh? All right. Mr. Steve.
Just a quick brief statement, kind of to follow what Randy was saying. As you grow older, particularly as a Christian, I mean, there's just no way around it, particularly with me. Wisdom surrounds, it's part of being a Christian, it's part of being close to God. Wisdom brings you closer to God with age, I think.
Yeah.
And so it's a big part of life as you age is the wisdom of God.
I think that this chapter would support you because it describes wisdom as God as one of his fundamental characteristics. So if you become more wise and you become more like God just in general. Not to say you can become, yes, you get what I'm saying. Okay. Anyone else have any thoughts before we move on? Sienna, any thoughts? I'm just kidding. All right. Now we're going to go to verses 22 through 31. I just read some of them. We're going to read them just so that we can have a refresh in our minds. If you want to turn there. Okay. The Lord possessed me at the beginning of his work, the first of his acts of old. Ages ago I was set up, at the first before the beginning of the earth. When there was no depths I was brought forth, when there was no springs abounding with water. Before the mountains had been shaped, before the hills I was brought forth. For he made the earth with its fields, or the first of the dust of the world. When he established the heavens I was there. When he drew a circle on the face of the deep. When he made firm the skies above. When he established the fountains of the deep. When he assigned to the sea its limit, so that the waters might not transgress his command. When he marked out the foundations of the earth, then I was beside him like a master workman, and I was his daily delight, rejoicing before him always, rejoicing in his inhabited world, and delighting in the children of men. This section is not what most people skip. This section is what most people skip over quickly or have never spent real time in, but is the most important section in the book. Wisdom is not just good advice, according to the writer of Proverbs. She was present before creation, before the mountains, before the oceans, before the earth itself. She was beside God, and the world was being made. She emerges from God's own being when God is carving the cosmos into order, and she delights in above everything being made is people. What she delights in being most that is made is people. So, okay. So, sorry, just a second. Yeah, the birthing imagery here is more than I have time to get into right now, and quite honestly is more in depth than I have on my head to study, or had on my head to talk about right now. It is, it's very deep. So I would recommend going to the Bible Project podcast And listening to the one they did on Proverbs chapter 8, it's really good. So, okay. If wisdom when present when God carved the cosmos into order, what does that mean for how the universe is structured? At a basic level, they don't have to get too deep on it, just...
There was purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Doing something by accident, it just doesn't seem. It's a lot of wisdom in that. Oh, this happened. I guess
Yeah.
keep that and everything.
Yeah.
It's all purpose.
Yes. I think that a lot of times you ask, if you went and talked to your random Washingtonian on the street, would they say, what would they describe as the great neutral, the great, like, there's nothing like one direction or another about it. I would argue that it is nature. Like, they would say nature just kind of is what it is, right? There's nothing good or bad about nature. It's just kind of the way it is. It's the way it banged into being. I think this as Christians, this kind of flip, like we probably didn't think that already, but this chapter kind of supports that wisdom was at the basis of nature. Like God or nature was founded on, and it's the bricks that built it is wisdom. Like there's nothing random about it. There's nothing that's just there. Everything was designed, and yes.
I would say that, science, this is science.
Yeah.
So science is wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Because science originates with God. God
Yeah.
set all the limits. God determined all the relationships. God set the measures. God created everything from down to the smallest molecule to the largest, the universe. And he set all the bounds. So he knows all the definition. And it was God's wisdom that put it into place. So that is our definition of science. That's what we try to discover. Science is a process of discovery, but it is discovering what God did and looking at the relationships of what God did.
Yeah. Mr. Steve?
Now I kind of want to make a balance here. If you were to make the creation as God did, how would you do it? And, what would we do? And we look at it, we see the wisdom of God in it.
Mm-hmm.
God had the wisdom to do it. And,
Yeah.
I mean, it just boggles my mind. It would be beyond anything any man could even think or consider
Yeah.
what God has done. And it was God's wisdom, of course.
Yeah. I think another interesting point is when you look at, this has nothing to do with your point, but when you look at earlier in the passage, it talks about rulers carving their laws into stone, right? And then also uses the carving analogy here, where God carved wisdom into creation. So it's kind of the same thing. He's that model of wisdom and rule, all human, at their best, all human rulers model themselves after God's rule over creation. So I think that's another interesting side point that we can get out of this. Is wisdom a set of principles layered on top of a morally neutral world, or is it woven into the fabric of creation itself? I think we just answered that question, so we're going to skip it. 1 Corinthians 1:24 calls Christ the wisdom of God. John 1 opens in a similar pattern. How does Christ, the wisdom of God, land differently now? You can think about this one for half a moment. Okay.
To the word.
Hmm?
To the word of God.
I think it's similar as how Jesus is called the Word, right? Jesus is the Word of God. Corinthians calls him the wisdom of God as well, I think is what the question is getting at. But, okay. You got what, 10 minutes? Yeah, Dad.
Well, Jesus is Christ is the wisdom of God in the plan. We can go back to when the plan was set in place before the foundations of the earth. So it's the same time when wisdom here is talking, when Solomon is writing this, talking about at the foundation, when God was creating, he created all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And with wisdom. At that same time, he created a plan for redemption of mankind, using Jesus as the vessel for that redemption.
Yeah.
And it was
interesting thing to think about too is at the Council of Nicaea, one of the big things that they talked about was based on this chapter was the origin of Jesus and his relation with God. Because a lot of times this talks about, so we have Corinthians calling Jesus the wisdom of God. And then we have here saying that wisdom was born, like that, it says it quite a few times. So does this mean that Jesus was the first creation of God at creation? Does it mean, so that was one of the big arguments that there was. And so, long story short, no, that is not, based on what the smart people that wrote about it, no, that is not what it means. It means that wisdom is such a basic, the basic fundamentals of God, and this is metaphorically speaking. If you really are very interested in it, again, listen to the podcast I plugged like 50 times. Continuing on. Okay. Well, I do like this question. Verse 30 says, "Wisdom delighted in the children of man." Does that still strike you as remarkable, or has familiarity dulled it? Okay. It's kind of a weird ending to the question, but I think that the point of the question lands home still. Knowing that, like, after all we've read about wisdom and wisdom's feelings toward various things, how does it still strike you? How does that make you feel that it says that its chief delight was in the children of men?
God's creation.
Mm-hmm.
God created us in his image.
I think that's interesting too when you think about the Old Testament and Genesis, and it said the thoughts of man's heart were continuously evil. It says that about all of creation when the sons of the flood, and then he says that about the Sodom and Gomorrah before he brought down fire and brimstone upon their heads. And so in the context of this verse, when it says wisdom's chief delight was the children of man, it says like 50 times. It says like 1,000,000 times in the first like 20 verses of this chapter that wisdom hates evil. And so, as long as there's still goodness and wisdom in our hearts, then it rejoices in us. But once that's gone, judgment comes. I think that shows that at the end of the chapter as well. The last verse: "He who fails to find me injures himself. All who hate me love death." So, I think that is a little bit like we've been hinting at like this whole time. It's a little bit of an absolute. Just one moment. Let's see what we got. Okay. Yeah, we're gonna finish it out here. So, verses 32 through 36. I'm gonna read. "And now, O sons, listen to me. Blessed are those who keep my ways. Hear instruction and be wise, and do not neglect it. Blessed is the one who listens to me, watching daily at my gates, waiting beside my doors. For whoever finds me finds life, and obtains favor from the Lord. But he who fails to find me injures himself. All who hate me love death." Obviously, this chapter opened at the city gates, calling to everyone, but it closes in the same way. Now, wisdom states plainly, finding her is finding life. Missing her is self-inflicted injury. The word for injuring yourself here is not passive. You're doing it yourself. Verse 36 closes with the sharpest line in the chapter. "Those who hate me love death." She does not say those who ignore her. She says those who hate her. Indifference to wisdom is functionally a preference for death. Okay. Verse 36 says, "Those who miss wisdom injure themselves. Where have you seen foolishness damage a person from the inside?" Don't laugh, Dad.
You can see it everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think drug abuse is like something that comes first to mind.
Yeah.
It's foolishness. We do it for our own pleasure, and it kills us.
I think too, if you look at pride, one of the things that stuck out to me most when I read this is I hate pride. I think that, like at least in my life, of like over the last like 6 months, I've like been talking to random people, and they're like, "Oh yeah, they said that's very prideful," or like, "You're very prideful," and it's like, okay, like I don't really think about myself as prideful, but it makes, when you get down to the brass tacks of it, pride manifests itself in so many different ways. And it can be in a way that you would not think as like the conventional method of pride but it's still the base root is the pride of life. Talks about. So I think that's another one that we can puff ourselves up so much that we're so tall and walking so high that we're going to trip on a rock and then fall face first because we're so inflated with our own ego. It's just the Grant commentary, though. Mr. Rick.
So I think if you think of all the stuff that we're not supposed to do, if you look at the outcome of people that do it anyway,
Yeah.
you can see their life of what happened. You know, if you
Yeah.
don't follow God.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just disastrous the more you do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We're going to go to the last question. Yeah. This chapter presents life and death as the only two destinations. After watching life unfold, does that binary feel true or oversimplified? Give you a moment. Give you a moment to think, to ponder. Cody doesn't know. Give him a little shoulder shrug. Dad's shaking his head.
It is still,
Yeah.
binary, it's true. It's life or death.
Yeah.
And we talked about this last week. I think a lot of Proverbs is you choose the path of wisdom, the path of foolishness. It's one or the other. There's nothing in between. There's a line, and the line is where God stops, foolishness starts.
Yeah. I think that a lot of times, my uncle, again, I talk to my uncle a lot, and he's good at pointing this out, is a lot of times we think that we know the right or wrong, but a lot of times there's a lot of, it's not just musical instruments right, musical instruments wrong, just bring up like a hot topic, like whatever you might think about it. There's people who think something opposite and have probably studied it just as much as you have. So, but I think that over the long run, it equals out. Like there's always going to be a common trajectory. You're going to have more right choices than wrong choices, and over time, those are going to compound and compound. Have you ever seen like a stock chart? Most of the time they go like that. It's not usually like a straight line, it's exponential. So, like when you take a step back and look at a 30-year timescape, then it's going to be, you will be able to put it in a binary category most of the time. Oh, Sunday, preacher plug. Daniel's talking about it. Okay, here's our closing thought. Read it when you want to. We'll leave it up. But I appreciate. Anyone have any closing thoughts? No closing thoughts. All right. I appreciate you guys' attention. I'll let you go 57 seconds early.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.